Today, we at Sardis Events will be putting various LED framing shutter lights head-to-head in the ultimate shootout. As a production company that is focused on excellence in performance, it's important to note that we did this shootout to cater to our purposes, and we thought it'd be great to share what discoveries we found with you. No $20 bills were slid under the table by any manufacturers to help sway our opinion of these products. This shootout is simply our professional opinion on our observations of these lights. So without further ado, let's take a look at our lineup. First, and in no particular order, we've got the Paky Axcor Profile 900. Next up, the Ayrton Ghibli. After that, we have the Vari-Lite VLZ Profile, followed by the high-end SolaFrame 2000. Next, we have the Martin Encore Performance CLD. And lastly, we decided to toss on our very own Vari-Lite VL3500 to occasionally see how it stood up to the rest of the crew, just for kicks. Note that because of the recording, not all color and light values will be exact to what you see in person. Also, we had a few issues with the console profiles that did have an impact on all of the access and capabilities of these lights. Due to our short allotted time to create this demo, we simply had to roll with those punches. Okay, first in the demo, we see all lights at 37% zoom. They all have different zoom ranges, so that's why they appear to be different. Next, we're checking focus at the far extremes. Zoomed out all the way. Zoomed in all the way. Now iris closed all the way. Paky is the sharpest here when focused with the iris closed. Back to 37% zoom on all fixtures. Now you see color mix full cyan. Color mix full magenta. Color mix full yellow. In person, the high end was a super bright yellow, one that you would probably never want to use on its own. But it did make a nice color mix green and blue. Here's color mix red. All did a pretty nice job and weren't too orange. And color mix blue. With color mixing, it's easy to see that the VL was not nearly as saturated as the other fixtures. And here's color mix green. And back to white. Now we see full CTO. 50% CTO. Back to open. Color wheel red. And here's color wheel blue. If any are off, it's because that fixture doesn't have it. Here's color wheel green. Note the VL has more of a Kelly green, is what they call it. Color wheel orange. Color wheel yellow. Color wheel dark blue. And then this is halfway between a couple different colors. With the color wheel, the VLZ once again wasn't as saturated, and we thought some of the color wheel choices were a bit odd. Slow rotation of color wheel. Fast rotation of color wheel. Back to open. This is Gobo wheel 1 of all fixtures, just scrolling through them. Notice the Martin has less gobos than the rest, and notice that the Ghibli has one more gobo than the others. Slow rotation of Gobo wheel 1. Note that the VL does not rotate on Gobo wheel 1, but it will on Gobo wheel 2 when we get there. And this is fast rotation of Gobo wheel 1. And here's some effects you can do on Gobo wheel 1, whether it's a shake or like a weird rotate thing, and back to open. Here's Gobo Wheel 2. Only 3 of the fixtures have a second Gobo wheel, the Ayrton, the VL, and the high end. The Ghibli also has one more Gobo than the rest. Here are the effects on Gobo Wheel 2. Somewhere there's an LD that uses these effects, but we haven't met them yet. And here's slow rotation on Gobo Wheel 2. And again, none of the others rotate on 2, but they all do it on 1. Here's fast rotation on Gobo Wheel 2. And back to open. Okay, here's the animation wheel. Note the way that the wheel rolls in on the Martin. The high end is not a wheel, it's a strip that only goes back and forth. The other fixtures will do a full circle, and some you can choose the part of the Gobo wheel that you want to use. Note whether it looks like a circle turning or a straight pattern going up and down. Also note that the Ayrton and the high end, you cannot fully focus the animation wheel, which is usually not a big deal since you're typically blending it with something else to give it that kind of watery effect or something, but it's just an interesting thing to note. Okay, now we're framing shutters. The Martin does not wipe all the way across with the shutters, but the rest do. Note the beam is on focus on some, but the blade is out of focus. So if it's for a stage wash, it's not a big deal because you're most likely putting frost in there. Here's the shape and how fast it can get there. Light frost. Heavier frost. We later discovered the heavy frost on the Martin is an optional accessory, and the profile we were using did not include that feature. Let's take a look at the pan and tilt of the fixtures. These fixtures were set to the default setting for speed. Ghibli was always the quickest, and the Martin was always the slowest. Alright, so light meter test. All of our fixtures were about 30 feet away from our cyc. We zoomed all of them to an equivalent of a 26-degree LECO, as that's a fairly common fixture we would use for a stage wash. We got a reading of all the lights with and without CTO. A big surprise was that the VL was not brighter than the Ayrton, even though it had 1,000 more lumens in the rating. Another interesting observation was that when zoomed down, the high end got very bright. But as you zoomed out to more stage wash type settings, it loses significantly more light than the others do. With the CTO test, we put a little bit of CTO to warm up the fixture. This was a different amount on each fixture since the CTO is different and the native color temperature is different. With the VL, we noticed that the color temp was so high that it took a lot more CTO to get it to an acceptable level, which reduced the brightness significantly. For our purposes of using this fixture for a stage wash, the CTO test was very important. A standard 26-degree LECO with CTB was about 32 foot candles. Okay, let's dive into some of our pros and cons of each fixture. The clay Paky. Pros was that it was very bright, it is very nice color, and the focusing is very nice with the framing shutters. Cons were, it's huge and heavy. We're told it does not fit into pre-rigged truss. For some people, that may be a big deal. It only has one Gobo wheel, and we're not a huge fan of the Gobos that are even in there. The zoom range is a little less than the others. It's got a higher cost, and it's got a higher power consumption. The Ayrton Ghibli. Pros, it's lightweight, it's a small size, it's very bright for its size. it's fast moving, overall good color mixing, great gobos, and it's got a low power consumption. Its cons? The jog wheel makes it harder to navigate the menu than most fixtures. Also, we like that it comes with a pre-cut foam, but don't like the orientation of the light in the foam. It would make it a lot harder for one person to take the light in and out of the case. Also, we wish the framing shutters could be in focus with the rest of the beam. Next, the Vari-Lite. Pros: overall solid fixture. Great standard VL gobos. And it's got a great price. Cons: poor saturation and color mixing. The color wheel colors aren't that great. For what the fixture does, it's a little heavy. The high end. Pros: it's a bright fixture. It's got great color mixing, good color wheel, and decent gobos. Cons: those indigo LED things are weird. Second is the strange bright yellow, but it contributes to good color mixing, so it's kind of up to the user. It's strange gobo effects. It's got a high price. It's got a terrible animation wheel. Can't cycle, it's just back and forth. And lastly, it's just kind of heavy in the head. The Martin. I should note that we ruled this one out because we're looking for a fixture that could be used as a stage wash. For a large show, this fixture just isn't nearly bright enough, but we'll go through the pros and cons anyways. Pros: good ergonomics with handles on the top. Decent color. It'd be great for an install or a theater application. It's got a cheaper cost. It's got small size and a nice design. It's also got the best internals of all the fixtures for maintenance, so it's super easy to service. Cons: slow movement in the pan and tilt and the gobo usage. It's low brightness. It has a weird yellow spot in the middle of it. We're not sure if this was our test fixture or if that's an issue with all of these lights. And lastly, it had pretty uneven light, which is pretty poor for a stage wash. We tossed our own VL3500 in the mix because that's the classic fixture that's been around since the early 2000s for framing shutter. You still see them being used in solid numbers, and yeah, it's just a all-around solid fixture. So this was our way to see where technology has come and be able to see that side-by-side comparison to judge the evolution of this technology. Most of these fixtures are a great replacement to this older fixture, as they're faster, brighter, and give a more even light. Alright, end results. We're going to rank this 1 through 5, and based on the pros and cons we just mentioned, we're going to give number 5 to the Martin. 4 is going to go to the clay Paky. Okay, so now we have the Ayrton, the high-end, and the Vari-Lite. We feel number 3 is going to go to the Vari-Lite, and between the Ayrton and the high-end, we're giving the first place to the Ayrton Ghibli. In the end, it was a tough decision between the Ayrton, the high-end, and the Vari-Lite for us. The Ghibli ended up taking gold for a number of reasons. Its small, lightweight frame goes a long way for us. Not only that, but it's small for having equivalent specs to the Vari-Lite and the high-end. The color was great, the gobos were all adequate, and the serviceability was wonderful. The serviceability was not as good as the Martin, but it's still really great. Also, the power consumption was very appealing for us, and the price was awesome. Alright, so there it is. Our shootout of a few impressive framing shutter fixtures. We should note that shortly after creating this video, Clay Paky has released their new Axcor Profile 600. We recommend keeping that fixture in mind as you're assessing this lineup and compare its specs accordingly. We at Sardis Events hope you've enjoyed this in-depth comparison and feel inspired by what you saw. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel for future tech tips and tricks.